An Equity Committee meeting today is Tuesday, June 4th. Council Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent at the moment. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. We have a quorum.
While it's not required, I'd like to make a motion to excuse both Conwell and Gallagher's absence today. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Council Clerk, do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one is signed in.
All right, thank you very much. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 30th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the meeting minutes have been approved. If you'll read the first item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2019-0115, confirming the county executive's appointment of Alan Davies to serve on the Cuyahoga County Public Library Board of Trustees for an unexpired term ending 3/31/2022.
All right, thank you very much. I see we have Ms. Sari Feldman in the building, but I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Pomerantz so you can give us a little background on this request.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the county executive is very proud to recommend Ms. Alan Davies. I don't think you're on. How about now? Want me to come up?
Good morning, Michelle Pomerantz, Regional Collaboration. The County Executive is very excited to nominate Ms. Alan Davies for an unexpired term serving the Cuyahoga County Public Library Board of Trustees, replacing Elizabeth Hajar, and for a term ending March 31st, 2022. Just some background, the system serves 47 communities, and its mission is to be the center of community life by creating an environment where reading, lifelong learning, and civic engagement thrive. Functionally, the board governs the library's overall operations, and as you mentioned, Madam Chair, Ms. Feldman is here as the board executive director for Cuyahoga County Public Libraries and can also offer support.
Okay, thank you very much. Before you go, I'd like to open up to my colleagues if there are any questions for Ms. Pomerantz regarding the composition or any questions around the current board as it stands. All right, if you could, I was going to say, if you could just share with us the composition, how many members?
I think it's on my paper over there.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Lifeline.
Apologies, Councilman Jones. Can I yield to Ms. Feldman?
Absolutely. Good morning.
I'm happy to stand before you this morning and say thank you very much. And I do want to say that Alan Davies is here with me this morning. So thank you very much. The Cuyahoga County Public Library Board is is supposed to have 7 members, and we currently have 6 members. We currently have 2 women and 4 men on the board, and we do have diversity on our board represented by Ed Blakemore, who maybe some of you know, who's African American, and Maria Spangler, who is Hispanic, who is also on our board of trustees.
Thank you very much. And will Ms. Davies become the third female with her if she is approved?
She'll become the 4th female.
The fourth. Oh, I thought.
Oh, did I say?
2 women and 4
I'm
men?
sorry,
Then I
she
may have
will
written it
become
down
the
wrong.
third. No,
Okay,
I'm
should be-
inaccurate. She will become the 3rd female on the board of 7. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
And she will be the 7th. She will complete.
She
the
will
board.
complete our board. We have been without our 7th board member since February, and it can create a hardship because the library has been doing a great deal of grant seeking to enhance our services, and the votes to accept those grants into our budget does require a supermajority of at least 5 at every board meeting, and they must be present.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilman Jones?
Those supermajority votes, have you failed to reach that supermajority in the past few votes since this has happened?
We have had to call upon one or two board members to come in at least for part of the meetings, which I think has been, and to move those votes to the beginning of the meetings. But so far, we have not failed to have those votes.
Did your answer, you're saying you had to make sure all 7 or all 6 were present?
Correct, yeah.
Attendance was somewhat of an issue then.
Yeah, I think that when we have a wonderful board. This council has done a phenomenal job for us, but our board members do have other commitments at times, and does make it challenging sometimes for them to attend.
Meet, Madam Chair.
Okay, sure. We meet as a board 11 times a year. We just take August off.
How long does a meeting typically last?
Meetings can go about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the necessity of discussion. We do presentations at every meeting about some aspect of the library.
Okay, thank you.
Miller?
God bless you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Ms. Feldman, am I correct that you are soon retiring from the library?
Yes, I am. So I am. I have announced my intention to retire. I announced in March, and I will be retiring on August 2nd. And so I have to say I'm delighted to be here today to show my appreciation for all that council does for the community, and also, again, all of the support we've been afforded by this council.
So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of our community for very long and effective service in leading the library system, and we have a phenomenal library system, one of the best in the country. It's one of the areas where Ohio excels in national comparisons, and I hope that we have the tools in place to keep it that way, and commend you for all the hard work and excellent leadership that you've provided.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Miller, and I am confident, even in their absence, Councilwoman Conwell and Councilman Gallagher, as well as Jones and I, echo those sentiments. You will be greatly missed. You have been a tremendous partner, and I think you know how much I enjoy working with you and the support you have just given me in your role as a leader for the library. So thank you for your services. And without further ado, if Ms. Davies would like to come up and give us a little bit of your background and why it is that you would like to serve.
Sure. Thank you, Council and members of the County Administration. My name is Alan Davies, and I'm seeking appointment to the Cuyahoga County Library Board of Trustees. And I want to thank Sari for being here on my behalf. She's a very supportive wingman today, and I am personally going to miss her, and she's got some big shoes to fill. But for me, for the past 6 years, I've served an active member of the Cuyahoga County Library Foundation Board, where I've focused my work and energy in raising funds in support of important library programs and services. And through my work on the foundation, I have learned a great deal about the critical role that the library plays in the community. County residents of all ages rely on the library for learning through access to technology, books, digital content, and programs. The library is deeply embedded in the community with resources and services that address education, employment, and economic development in our region. In particular, I've been thoroughly impressed and actually in awe by the library's work with the county to improve convenience in accessing government services, from the Benefits Navigator to voter registration to GED referrals. The collaboration between the county government and the county library is directly benefiting the residents of Cuyahoga County. I believe I can contribute as a member of the library's operating board to the important oversight of libraries' finances and key policies. Coming from the foundation, I have a deep foundation for strong fiscal stewardship of public funds. I sincerely believe in the library's mission of being at the center of the community life by creating an environment where reading, lifelong learning, and civic engagement thrive. I respectfully request that you favorably consider my appointment to the Cuyahoga County Public Library Board of Trustees, and I welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Much, and thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity. I see you used to be a nurse at
I did. I
Health.
retired from Metro Health after 30 years there.
And so, if you don't mind me asking, how did you learn about the opening?
Actually, Sari had made me aware of it, and she'd suggested that I might consider it and be a good candidate.
Excellent. And the other thing that I recently learned is that I think the statistics stated that 66% of the people in Cleveland, while many of the branches, most of the branches serve the suburban communities, are have a low function literacy rate. Would you be willing? What do you think you would be able to do in your capacity to help reduce this number?
Well, I definitely would support all the programs that the library offers in terms of the Aspire Cleveland, the literacy training, certainly the homework centers, getting the young people educated and on the right track. Basically, just supporting all the existing programs.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Okay, well, it looks like you have you have demonstrated clearly why you are a good candidate, and I think it speaks to both your desire to serve as well as Ms. Feldman's our trust and confidence in her. So I welcome you, and I look forward to you becoming a member of this Board of Trustees. So without further ado, I understand there is a need to get this through rather quickly. So I'll make a motion to move it under second reading suspension. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns from my colleagues, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. This will move to the full body of the council at our next council meeting. And again, thank you for coming in and your
you.
willingness to serve. It is greatly appreciated. Council Clerk, will you read the next item?
Resolution number 2019-0116, confirming the county executive's reappointment of various individuals to serve on the Cuyahoga County Community Improvement Corporation Board of Trustees for the term 1/1/2019 to 1/1/2022.
All right, thank you very
Is it
much.
working?
I'll turn it over to Ms. Pomerantz, if you'll please give us some background.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ashley, for making this work. Good job. Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. The Cuyahoga County Community Improvement Corporation is one of the boards that we've been working on for the past several meetings. And Brian E. Hall and Michael Obie would be reappointments for 3-year terms. And we are also requesting second reading suspension. The CCCIC was incorporated in 1982. Its sole purpose is advancing, encouraging, and promoting the industrial, economic, commercial, and civic development of Cuyahoga County. And the corporation serves as Cuyahoga County's review agent for industrial revenue bond financing and economic development lending activity. These members will be serving for 3-year terms. And I know that Michael Obie is here, but we did have a cancellation, and Brian E. Hall could not be here today. It is our hope that we can still recommend moving forward. Brian Hall has had good attendance at the meetings, and his resume is attached. I think there was a sudden pullout that he couldn't be here today, so I'm happy to consider whatever your next steps are with that. But to that end, Mr. Obie is here today to speak to his desire to continue to serve on the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Obie, if you'll please step forward, state your name for the record and why you'd like to continue to serve in this capacity.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
May I
Councilman.
ask a question?
Absolutely,
Ms.
Councilman Miller.
Pomerantz? My question is as to how many board members there are on the CCIC and how they're appointed.
So the CCCIC appointment process is that the county has some appointments that are internal and some that are external. And the external appointments include Brian Hall and also Michael Obie. Right now, there are, besides these 2 reappointments, 1 vacancy that we're moving through the pipeline through for the private sector. So the private sector class board members include Jeffrey Bechtel, Richard Perry, Radhika Reddy, potentially Michael Obie, potentially Brian Hall, and there's a vacancy that's been left because Tanya Manise went to the city of Cleveland. We have somebody that we're considering in that space for the next council meeting to be introduced. And then there's the county class, which Matt Carroll has replaced Chris Murray, Dennis Kennedy, me, thank you very much, Khalil Surin, and we have one more consideration for the county class that we're thinking to bring forward.
So how many total members are there?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay, thank you.
And I just a quick follow-up on that, Ms. Pomerantz. There are 11. Can you, what is the gender breakdown?
1, 2. Let's say that these two gentlemen are reappointed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 men, and then potentially 3 women.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, all right, thank
The
you.
one that
Tanya,
Tanya, we may replace with, we're considering somebody, but the person that's replacing Joseph Ferris is potentially a female. So we would maintain, actually would add one since my addition. So it would go from 2 to 3 once we get everything done, hopefully by the next council meeting.
all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Obie, if you'll give us a little bit of your background and share with us why you'd like to continue to serve in this capacity.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to serve. My background is banking. You know, I was a banker for 17 years. Spent about 10 years at Key Bank as senior vice president, running the business banking. So I have passion for economic development. So I left banking in 2007, and then I started doing a lot of economic development work in the community. My first project or introduction to economic development in the city of Cleveland is really with the Urban League. I was privileged to work on that project to create an entrepreneurship center at the Urban League, and that model has been replicated across the nation in 12 different cities by Mark Morial. I also do economic development work with the University Circle. I facilitate and design programs to help entrepreneurs really grow in the community. I'm also a small business owner in Cleveland. I own multiple Little Caesars pizza franchise where we employ a lot of young people. So my reason for wanting to be on this board is really to bring a perspective that is a blend of the commercial banking discipline in lending and also sensitivity to the needs for neighborhood development and job creation in our community that is inclusive. So those are kind of my overarching reason to serve.
Thank you very much. You touched on the neighborhood component. With the having served, can you speak to any of the successes or challenges you have experienced in your role?
Well, success is, again, I think so far the deals that have come through us have been, none of them that I'm aware of have gone bad, which is number one, because they kind of want their money repaid back, right? So I'm pleased to say that we really ask tough questions. We're not rubber stamp for the Economic Development Department because they bring deals to the table, and then we review and ask tough questions of those that want to borrow money or those that want to receive county incentives in terms of what is their plan for economic development, job creation, and make sure that we hold them accountable to meeting those metrics. So I think from that standpoint, we've been successful. Opportunities for improvement, we would like to see more deals come forward from neighborhoods development, which is an overall challenge, with making sure that we encourage, development in certain neighborhoods that are financially attractive to investors. Because, county and the city provides incentive, but those are portions of the overall capital structure. So I think we as a community need to look for ways to continue to create attractive transactions that will be inclusive, that will make certain neighborhoods attractive. I think maybe Opportunity Zone probably could do some of that. That includes Glenville and Hoff and near West Side. So that's kind of a big picture. It's a bigger, this board alone will not solve all that problem, but I think there's an overarching work that needs to be done to make sure that all neighborhoods are included and come forward with projects that will create job and vitality in these neighborhoods.
You were in my head. So the opportunity zones you speak about, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, is downtown Cleveland considered an opportunity zone in and of
It
itself?
was one of those included, yes.
So the entire footprint, not, not a specific street, but
Sure.
the entire, is that correct?
Well, I'm not an expert in Opportunity Zone. We're still learning because it's evolving.
Okay.
The first iteration of that was federal government giving a deadline for all the states to submit census tracts that they want to be included.
Okay.
And, all the cities and the counties submitted to Columbus during Governor Kasich. Then they decided out of that, let's say, I forget the exact number for the state of Ohio, maybe for illustration purposes, maybe it's 35.
Gotcha.
And they asked everybody to submit maybe 60 something. And then in Columbus, they decided which 35 out of the 60 something. So some neighborhoods were excluded, some were included.
Gotcha.
So that's what we have. But I think there's room to make it better. I think there's some incentives going through the state level to make it more attractive to maybe those neighborhoods that may not be as attractive as downtown, because everybody want to be downtown projects because of the economics of the of downtown. Yeah.
So with that said, you touched on the fact that you've had good ROI on on the deals that we have approved. Just for the sake of just helping us understand, can you identify for us maybe one or two of the larger deals that we or the community would be familiar with that you guys reviewed?
The most recent one was an old church building that is going to be converted into indoor rock climbing. It was a building,
Detroit Shoreway area?
Detroit Shoreway, that has been vacant for many, many years, boarded up, a lot of vandalism going on. So a young man that moved out of Cleveland, Clevelander, grew up in Shaker Heights, I believe, came back to town trying to do something to revitalize the neighborhood. And I hear from the presentations that rock climbing is really it's an in thing. So it's doing very well in Philadelphia, most cold cities like Cleveland.
Okay.
So this will be something that I think could bring a lot of energy in that neighborhood, where you've taken a building that's just been an eyesore and turn it around to an attraction that will bring people from all over Northeast Ohio.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. You have any questions? Councilman Jones?
Good to see you here,
Good
Mr.
to see
Obie.
you, Councilman.
All right, I was just reflecting back on times that I was with you and the Urban League, and there were entrepreneurship seminars you were providing for the reentry population,
Sure.
helping them to go into business for themselves. So I want to thank you for all your hard work in the community.
Thank you.
One question is the loans that you review, more actually maybe the loans that you have not reviewed. Can you say that you all have seen all of the loans that the county may do? Have they all passed through the CCIC?
I can't speak to, I don't know in details what loans come versus which loans that don't come.
Don't come.
So I don't know, there has to be a filtering process with the underwriters to know which ones come up. But what we are presented with, the deals that they want to recommend, then our job is to kind of look under the hood and ask tough questions of those people that want to borrow and the staff at Economic Development. But we really don't get involved in which deals come to the board.
I got you. As you said, you're not a rubber stamp.
Yes.
The heart of what you do is critical work. And the heart of my question was I wanted to know that every loan that should be vetted is actually being vetted. I think one of our staff, Khalil, would like to add a few words.
Just for a bit of clarification, the CIC handles the vetting for, or at least one step of the vetting for all of the economic development loans that come to council or go to Board of Control. However, there are loans that the county makes that are community development loans that go through a different process. So these are CDBG loans. Some of these loans are for homeowners to, fix up certain issues with houses and that kind of thing. And those loans, those community development loans that are federally funded, do not come to the CIC. But those are a very separate group of loans with different regulations and very strict federal regulations that really don't necessitate their submittal to the CIC for vetting. And I don't think that those types of loans would really be in the wheelhouse of the CIC for vetting because they're not business loans. So just to clarify that.
Yeah. Thank you. How long have you served on the board?
I think 2 years going on 3. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Miller, any questions?
Yes, thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. And my question is how much and what kind of deals do you currently have in the pipeline that's under consideration by CIC at this time?
I guess I'll have to bring, can you come up? That's more of a staff question. We really don't know until, there are some months where we have no deals, so we cancel meetings. So he will know better what is in the pipeline.
At this point, we don't have any particular deal that we are aware of for vetting. We, as Mr. Obi said, we get notified when the deal is ready. So there's an internal department process where they're going through their deal team meetings and figuring out what loans they're interested in putting forward, and we don't hear about them until they get through that internal process.
Okay, and also just a comment that I also want to speak on behalf of Brian Hall. He's an entrepreneur, a business owner, and very active in diversity and inclusion work, and I'm very comfortable with his serving on the CIC and would be prepared to recommend both nominees at this time. Thank you.
Well, on that note, if there are no further, Councilman Jones.
Indeed. Have there been any loans where, you said they were successful, the ones that have gone through, have you found any loans that were a challenge and maybe you found concerns with them? And if that happens, what happens? What is the process? Do you reject or do you go back for strengthening or what?
Yeah. Without, for interest of time, let me bring back the deal we approved for the rock climbing. The first time it came, we didn't approve. We needed some data to have confidence that this phenomenon is real because, I'm not a rock climber, so we want to learn more and say, okay, tell us how the ones that have gone up in Philadelphia and some of these other cities have done. And then also look at, there are some rock climbing facilities in Cleveland who give us more insight on how well they've done. So we had to reschedule another time, but we did it over a conference call where the borrower and the county staff had to come back to make us comfortable with that this will be a viable operation. So that's an example of where we didn't approve on the first pass, and had then not come back with the stronger answers to our questions, we probably would have declined. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me also add, I also support Brian Hall. I know his work, and he's definitely someone I will support as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Obi. Well, given those remarks and your willingness to serve in this capacity and the need to move this to under second reading suspension, I will make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you again. This will move to the full body of the council at our next council meeting. Council Clerk, will you read the next item into the record?
Resolution number 2019-0117, confirming the county executive's reappointment of A. Stephen Dever to serve in his official capacity as representative of Cuyahoga County on the Lake Erie Energy Development Corporation Board of Directors for the term 5/1/2019 to 4/30/2021.
And Ms. Pomerantz, if you'll give us a little bit of background.
Yes, Madam Chair, the Lake Erie Energy Development Corporation was created in August of 2009 and was created by the Great Lakes Energy Development Task Force and developed and launched by the Nortec Energy Enterprise, the Cleveland Foundation, City of Cleveland, and Cuyahoga County and Lorain counties. It was founded as a private nonprofit regional corporation to initially erect wind turbines in Lake Erie and eventually help stimulate an entire offshore freshwater and wind industry in the Great Lakes. LEEDCO is a regional economic development public-private partnership that has brought and continues to bring together important project stakeholders from the City of Cleveland, the Port Authority, and coastal counties. The county executive is excited to reappoint Steve Dever as Cuyahoga County's representative on this LEEDCO commission.
And I guess we'll just continue with the same pattern if you could let us know the composition.
That is not something that is anywhere for me to find. I've been looking and searching, and I'm just hoping that maybe Steve might know more, but LEEDCO is a really hard one to find out what the rest of their makeups were.
Okay. Well, we'll ask Mr. Dever to step forward and start off with a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to continue to serve in this capacity. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, members of council. I was originally appointed to a task force that was established by Commissioner Tim Hagan and Prosecutor Bill Mason back in 2006, which was the task force that was created to look at offshore wind as an economic development opportunity for the region. Subsequent to that time, I retired from the county prosecutor's office after 25 years in 2010 and was appointed to the LEEDCO board. The LEEDCO board includes Erie County, Ashtabula County, Lake County, Lorain County, Cuyahoga County, the City of Cleveland, the Port Authority, the Cleveland Foundation. Each one of those entities has a single appointment to the board. As far as the composite makeup right now, I believe that there are 2 women on the board. I believe that Erie County, Pennsylvania has a former county commissioner. She serves as well as Lorain County as well. And those are all appointments made by the commissioners or the elected officials of whatever community they are. The reason that I want to continue to stay focused on this project is that I believe in it, and I think that eventually offshore wind will come to the Great Lakes. The developments that are taking place in the Atlantic Ocean and the east coast of the United States clearly indicate that there is an economic development component that will provide a great value to these communities that develop offshore wind. Cost of offshore wind and the business case for offshore wind through innovation and technology upgrades is really accelerated, and you now see that onshore wind energy as well as solar are the 2 most affordable or most competitive forms of electricity generation in the United States today. They even beat out gas-fired turbines. So as these innovations continue, there will be an occurrence in the Great Lakes, and hopefully this management by public entities will be able to control the development in the Great Lakes so that it benefits the communities and is not just a hodgepodge of projects by developers who secure approval from the state of Ohio. And also that the developments that take place are localized in that the industry is developed here in the Great Lakes, here in the Cleveland area. I'm sure that you all know that Ohio is the second leading manufacturer of parts that go into wind turbines in the United States. And that's because of the economic machining and industries that we have. We fit very well into the wind industry space. So we are now at that point. We've sold 60% of the output, the electricity output through a series of agreements, including with Cuyahoga County. We are at that point where we are securing approval for all of the permits through the Ohio Power Siting Board. I believe last week, I think we went through our last hurdle. There was probably about 15 different agencies, federal and state, that you need to get approval from in order to put something in Lake Erie, especially these wind turbines. And we have met the requirements of the state of Ohio. I believe that we're there at this point in time, as well as the federal government. The Army Corps of Engineers has cleared this project as well. So we're on course. We're at that final hurdle, which is to sell the remaining power, about 40% of the output of these turbines. And the strategy to do that is to offer a mixed product of using solar renewables as a portion of a electricity product that can be sold to industries that have, or businesses that have an interest in just purchasing renewables. And there is a market out there, and I think that we're going to meet that strategy. So it's our hope that 2021, 2022, we'll finally get this project, these 6 turbines off of Lake Erie, off of Cleveland Harbor, that will be up, and that they will be the first phase in developing offshore wind in the Great Lakes, with Cleveland being the hub for that industry. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I find this just fascinating. It's a very it's a lot to learn. It's a lot for me to learn. So I'm just impressed with your knowledge and all of the things that you've just shared. You talked a little bit about Ohio being the second leading producer of parts. Is that for the wind turbines?
Yes.
Okay, so can you give us an idea of how many people that are employed by this industry in Ohio?
I believe, I'm sorry, that there is a publication that was created. If you go back to your the report that the Energy Task Force created for Cuyahoga County, Building a New Energy Future, I think that was published in 2009. It has the exact statistics.
Okay.
Of course, those have been updated. When we first went about this in the county, and I think you put about $250,000 into the feasibility study back in 2007 to really evaluate, is there a business case for this, first of all? And second of all, does Ohio have the skill sets to take advantage of offshore wind? And part of the evaluation that was done during that time frame through the task force was to look at economic development opportunities. Since that time, the agreement that we've reached with Fred Olson Renewables, who is a large player in offshore wind space worldwide, with installation vessels, they were the ones who developed the Block Island project off of Rhode Island, the only offshore wind project in North America right now. And part of the portion of our agreement with them in participating in this project is that they had to localize. They had to look for skill sets, trades, producers, suppliers in Ohio, in the Midwestern region, so that they could also develop the learning capabilities to take advantage of this single project. Because a single project needs to lead to second, third, fourth projects in order for it to create the promise of economic development. So, I mean, we've been mindful of that from the beginning. It has to localize, it has to create opportunity, and it has to create investment. That's why, you know, the county has taken such a leadership interest in this from the beginning, is to create and make this county the hub for offshore wind in the Great Lakes.
So, serving as the hub, the 6 turbines, the project came before us, but it's been some time. Can you remind me of how much energy, I guess, we anticipate being able to produce from the wind turbines? Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, well, the turbines, as this project has plodded along, the technology has increased, and now we're looking at a Vestas turbine, which is about 3.5 megawatt. The Lincoln Electric turbine, for reference, is 2.5 megawatts. So it's a little bit bigger, more healthier, more robust as far as producing electricity. And we're looking at about 10 to 12,000 households will be powered from this offshore wind installation.
Impressive. I'll open it up to my colleagues if there are any questions. I'll start with Councilman Miller this time.
Do you basically have all the pieces in place to move forward on this project, or are there still some some hurdles that could create significant delays, and if so, what are those?
The only hurdle is to have to encourage the rest of that output, that 40% that I talked about. We need to sell that power in order to get to financial closing with Fred Olson Renewables. We are sitting on a $51 million Department of Energy grant that's really offsetting the cost of this installation, and we've been renewing it because we've been meeting milestones and done all of the engineering work, have identified the type of foundation. Actually, a Cleveland foundation has been developed that will be used across the Great Lakes as far as the primary way to install wind turbines, and that's part of the product that's been created here. It's just to fill that gap to close the sale of that remaining power, and we're optimistic with the interest in renewables and the fact that we are able to put a blended rate, somewhat of taking very, very affordable solar power and match that up with a small sliver of offshore wind power and sell that to industries and hospitals and those companies who have made the commitment to promote renewables and use that as the way to market that remaining 40%. Once that financial gap is closed and once we've gotten to the point, then we're ready to move forward. The last hurdle we had was with Power Siting Board. We finished that, I believe, last week, and hopefully that certificate's going to be issued in the next 6 weeks, and that will give a green light for the project as far as the regulators are concerned.
How much time is required for construction once it begins?
This will be done in 2 seasons. First season will be the manufacturing of the foundations at the Port of Cleveland, 6 massive foundations. These are 6-story buildings basically that are being assembled. And then the next season in the spring will be the installation, placement of the foundations and the installation of the turbines.
If the state legislature passes the bill that's currently pending, which is
House Bill 6.
call it a clean power bill, but as I understand it, is more like the opposite. Would that have any adverse impact on your ability to sell the power?
I will say this, is that it is very peculiar that the state of Ohio that had a renewable portfolio standard that Governor Strickland passed in 2009 or 2010, which has increased investment in renewables here in Ohio. The fact that you have a large company called First Solar up in Toledo, the pioneers of solar electricity generation, and we are not able to convince our friends in the middle of Ohio and down in southern Ohio as to the virtue of renewables. But for the leadership of Cuyahoga County, but for the leadership of some of the cities in Ohio, we are being left behind because of these notions that we need to bail out 2 tired old nuclear power plants and 2 coal-fired plants. One of them, it's not even in Ohio, that the ratepayers are going to have to pay for. So it's really going to be the governments like Cuyahoga County that are going to have to lead the way, and hopefully that somehow the rest of the state is going to catch up and see the virtue, see the value in promoting renewables and how that is going to affect our quality of life as far as economic development and investment, but more importantly, the climate issues as well as the health issues.
It sounds like you're saying that House Bill 6 would have an adverse impact. Is that correct?
Well, it will eliminate the renewable portfolio standard so that those few cents of what are known as renewable energy credits, there will not have a market in Ohio for them. They can be traded with other electricity users throughout the United States, but it really diminishes the responsibility that all utility generation had in the state of Ohio. I mean, keep in mind that in 2005, President Bush announced the clean energy goals of establishing 20% of electricity generation by 2030. And that objective and that goal required that there be a great investment in offshore wind power in order to meet that. And now, since these policies have changed, and since gas-fired generation has come along, which is really very, very affordable and has essentially knocked out the coal industry as being the primary source for electricity generation, We are awash in natural gas, and it's made electricity very, very cheap. So without incentives out there to help bring these new industries along so that to the point that they can innovate and increase their technology to be competitive, the wind industry is going to go where incentives are available, where it makes sense economically for them to put their investments. So long-winded answer to your question, House Bill 6 is troubling to all renewables.
One final question. I keep hearing this issue about the effect that the wind turbines have on the migratory birds, and it would seem to me that there ought to be something that you could install on the wind turbines that would just move them off or push them away or something and prevent this. My question is have we made any progress on dealing with that problem?
I think it's a very good question. I know that Cuyahoga County, when we were going through the feasibility study, paid for a significant amount of bird and bat studies to look at these locations out in Lake Erie and determine whether or not they have an adverse impact on migratory birds crossing over Lake Erie. Part of the enormous regulatory oversight that the Power Siting Board required from us was actually to do further studies and to enter into an agreement that there would be pre-construction monitoring of that site to see if there is any type of bird kills during construction, the continued monitoring, and then post-construction monitoring to ascertain whether or not there is a legitimate concern for bird kills. The scientists and the people that are dealing with birds, ornithologists, I believe is what they're called, they do not believe that these 6 turbines out in Lake Erie are going to produce any type of great hazard to waterfowl. In addition, through the Power Siting Board, there's been an agreement during the migratory seasons where the great numbers of birds are crossing over the lake that these turbines agreed to be curtailed at certain times during the migratory season so that they don't possess any kind of threat, as well as they're not going to be lighted at night so that they don't attract waterfowl and bats to those locations and then end up being harmed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Miller. Councilman Jones?
Thank you. You mentioned that the turbine energy is going to the corporations. Do you see in time it getting into the hands, or is it here in the hands of the everyday citizen household?
Well, on this project, the offshore wind, the primary purchaser of the electricity is going to be Cleveland Public Power System, as well as Cuyahoga County. You're going to be powering some of your buildings with this offshore wind, and without your leadership, we wouldn't be getting there. I know that if you go into the Giant Eagle, and I've been seeing it now for several months now in Rocky River, they're selling Texas wind power. They got somebody standing out there at the door trying to get people to sign up for renewables. There is an appetite out there for the average citizen who wants to buy clean energy. When we went through our community engagement portion, we had a clean power pledge, and I believe we got 50, 60,000 people who indicated that they would be willing to buy offshore wind if it was made available to them, and even at a higher cost. So, society is evolving to the point in time where we recognize that we have responsibilities towards global warming, towards the climate, towards health conditions, that putting carbon into the air is not the best path going forward. So I would expect that you're going to see utilities are going to be selling to customers. They're actually marketing to them now that they're offering renewables as part of their electricity portfolio.
I think I heard you answer my second question in there in terms of the cost for the average citizen. If I wanted to call CPP, which I have, and say I wanted to use renewable and wind energy, is that more expensive or is it less expensive?
Well, if you wanted to use renewables, land-based renewables for wind are the cheapest form of generation that's out there in the United States today. That and the solar. And then close in line there is gas-fired generation. The only problem with wind is it's intermittent. The wind doesn't blow all of the time, so you have to marry that up with a gas-fired turbine to peak up when, on those hot days or when the wind's not blowing. So those costs are competitive, and they beat out coal-fired generation. And that's why these coal plants are going away, is because the market's no longer there for them. And if the state was not, or the ratepayers weren't subsidizing these 2 nuclear power plants, they would go away as well. For offshore wind, we're not there on that cost curve yet. It's come down significantly, but it's got a way to go. But if you see and look at what the Germans are doing and what they're doing in the North Sea as far as the installation of these massive turbines, they're getting down there where they're competitive, where they think they can beat 6-7 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. So that's just the innovation that's coming.
So it's just not there just yet.
Not there
If I
yet.
wanted this because I believe in clean energy.
Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. How many turbines do we have so far since you've been?
Well, this project calls for 6. These will be Vestas machines. They're going to be manufactured in Colorado. The objective has always been to make it American products. The foundations are hopefully going to be built here in Cleveland. There's a company also in Erie, Pennsylvania that is participating in this. And we've gone through, these job and skill forums that we've had, where we've got an enormous amount of interest from the building trades as well as suppliers who want to figure out how to get into the wind industry space. And it's always been, and the objective is that you need to localize this, because if you're building turbines that are coming from China with towers that are made in Vietnam and blades that are made in Brazil, there's no benefit to this community other than, the few workers that will build and install them and maintain them. But if we can use this as the way to, draw by developing a market for turbine manufacture to be made here in the Midwest, blades to be made in the Midwest, as well as towers, then you build the industry.
I heard you say market. Did you mean an industry? You want to develop the industry here?
Yes, sir.
I just remember we've been talking about wind turbines, and Councilman Brown mentioned it's an interesting and exciting area. And when I go back to 2011, when I was first introduced to it, the concept was, at least the way I understood it then, was it wasn't so much about just the power, but Cleveland's ability to become a manufacturer.
Yes.
To go from a steel industry and transition those companies into making these products. So at that time, it was, I won't say it was, we were in the conversation stages. You say we're now the second leading manufacturer in Ohio?
Ohio is the second largest manufacturing of wind products in the United States.
Oh, in the United States.
In the United States, oh, yes.
Okay.
The manufacturing muscle in this region, the wind people call this the Cleveland Valley because of all of these factories and machine shops that are surrounding Cuyahoga County that are loaded with component manufacturers that are putting parts into those. In 2007, 2008, the task force assisted Lincoln Electric, and we went to Germany in an attempt to allure a company called Kenersys, who was interested in entering into the U.S. market for turbines. Actually, that's a Kenersys turbine on the Lincoln property. But the challenge that they had is until you can create the market, you can't really get the investment. So the way to do the market is, first of all, develop the pilot project, which this is, prove to community, prove to all of those out there that, one, there's a business case for it, it can make money for investors, and secondly, that it does not cause any kind of adverse interest to the environment and to the other users of Lake Erie. And most importantly, the promise that it gives something to, as far as economic development to the region. Otherwise, this is all private industry that should be developing this stuff. We've decided that we need to get involved in it because we want to be able to shape how that development occurs in the Great Lakes and to really get it to concentrate here in Cleveland.
Is there a minority ownership in any of these small companies that are developing?
Part of the attraction effort that we went through was to actually identify minority and businesses owned that could participate in the installation process of the project, and I'd be happy to send to you what the various job fairs and companies that have been vetted and identified to have the skill sets to be able to do that, whether they are on shore, doing at the Port of Cleveland, doing some of the installation process as far as manufacturing the foundations to actually the installation in Lake Erie.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of more questions that I'd like to ask. You spoke about a company in Colorado and Erie, PA. Sounds like they will be involved in the production of the actual wind turbines themselves. Am I to understand that?
Well, the machines themselves will be manufactured by Vestas. Vestas is a huge, I believe they're a Norwegian company. And they have roughly about a third of the U.S. market for reliable turbines. They've built an installation in Colorado for land-based turbines. They've just originally presented a project for offshore wind turbines. Originally, when we started this task force, one of the best entities that worked with us, other than Lincoln Electric, was General Electric. And we went to in Schenectady, New York, to their global research center and to look at what their vision was for wind turbines. They got out of the offshore wind space. Now I see that they've gotten back in by buying a French offshore wind turbine manufacturer, and you're going to probably see as the market grows that you're going to have big players from across the world, the Chinese, the Germans, and GE participating in trying to develop the larger turbines. You have turbines now that are 10 megawatt machines, so about 3 times the size of what the Lincoln turbine is. So they're going to get bigger, broader, swept wings or blades on them, and they will produce more electricity.
So I guess the next question I would ask is, given the rapid improvements in technology, have we put ourselves in a position that we will be unable to take advantage of that? Is Vestas moving in that direction? I guess, are there contracts in place is what I'm asking?
Well, the way that this project is going to be developed is Fred Olson USA Renewables is going to acquire the assets of the LeadCo pilot project once that power is sold, and they will develop it. It's the part of the agreement that they have with the LeadCo and with the communities is that they need to localize and demonstrate either that they cannot acquire the products or services here in Ohio, or that there's a significant disparity in cost or quality for them to depart and to go outside of the region in order to have somebody else be a supplier. When offshore wind arrives in the Great Lakes, and I'm pretty confident it's coming, and it's regardless of what the state of Ohio chooses to do as far as creating incentives for renewables, when it arrives, then you're going to see turbine manufacturers that they're going to end up where those projects are located. The original projects that started to develop in the United States were mostly out west, Iowa as well, and they developed they had a turbine manufacturing facility in Iowa. Texas is where they're growing. The company here on the west side of Cleveland, American Fabrication and Tank, is one of our partners in the foundation design and construction. And, that's one of the things that we think is a great asset, that this company, through this participation in this project, is going to be able to develop those foundations. Those foundations are fairly significant, costly items to put together, and you really have to have skill sets to be able to do that. So that experience will create opportunity for them when the next project comes along. And that's how you build it, through experience and through learning from past practices, so that the next project that comes along, it's not going to be 6 turbines, it's going to be 200 turbines, and that's where the real development will come.
So there are contracts in place for, just with some contingencies, it sounds like?
Yeah, well, that's all run through the Fred Olson Renewables, who has, we've expended funds for the engineering and getting all of that certified, so that the Department of Energy, who is overseeing the spending of the taxpayers' money, wants to make sure that when these projects are installed in Lake Erie, that they're not a mistake in the lake, that they don't fall over or the ice gets them or something like that, and that they just are a complete disaster. So part of the process has been proving the concept of being able to do this, and they have the engineering and certifications that are required to do that, and that's been much of the activity of the task force, as well as the activities of Fred Olson Renewables and the Department of Energy through the Renewable Energy Electric Laboratories in Boulder, Colorado, that is overseeing the implementation of the grant itself.
Okay, and you talked about the towers. What material are they made of? Is it steel?
This will all be steel with concrete, steel foundation put down onto the ground, out onto the seabed, concrete pumped into there to hold that, and then steel coming up, similar to what you see at Lincoln.
Okay. And when you mentioned Erie, PA, what is their, I didn't catch their role or the
Well, Erie-
company.
They have a dry dock there, and I think they're probably the dry dock facilities as far as being the ability to build, to barge, to do the installation. They will need to require, I think it's the Don John is the name of the shipbuilding operation in Erie, and that's one of the reasons why they joined the task force, is they recognize that there's development opportunity in working collectively as a region to go after this. I mean, otherwise we would all be competing. One county would be competing with another county. Cuyahoga County has roughly 700 square miles of water. Okay. And if you can put that together from Erie, Pennsylvania, all the way to Lorraine, that huge mass of water there, and then do it in a very prudent, responsible way of identifying sites that are either in dead zones where there's lack of oxygen in the water, so that you're not really adversely affecting any kind of aquatic life, and perhaps even creating reefs by doing this kind of stuff, and do it in a very prudent development style so that the communities are not harmed by this, because not everybody thinks that wind turbines are great. And I mean, and that's where you have to look at the minimum offense that it will have to other users of Lake Erie.
Okay, and then finally, I guess I just want to know that what we have found, what we found is, it sounds like there have been some restrictions since we've, or am I misunderstanding that? It sounds like some restrictions have been put in place, or some hurdles have been put in place since we first started this conversation. So they are making it more challenging
It's
for,
been very challenging, and you know, we have received the support of most of the people who are involved in the environmental space in nationally as well as in Ohio, and they were. We had public hearings here at Cleveland City Hall that the Power Siting Board had, and a number of people came to speak on behalf of the project. Some people came in and disagreed with it. But the challenges concerning the environmental responsibility, those were all addressed. And the Power Siting Board, it's my belief, is sufficiently satisfied now that this project will not create any adverse consequences to fish or wildlife, so that it would be in violation of state's responsibility to protect the environment.
and is there an expiration on that $51 million grant?
Well, they've slowly been painted down. I think we've taken about, in the development process, they're well into this because they believe in this project. So there's not been any kind of deadlines as far as completing it. We were in a competitive grant scenario with 11 other projects across the United States, West Coast, down in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the East Coast. And we are the only freshwater project. That means that they're the only project in the Great Lakes. It's underway. There's projects that are being moved along, but it's our anticipation that even with our setbacks that we've had, that this will be the first offshore freshwater wind project in the world. So we're still on track for that.
And given the composition of the board of directors, you are the sole representative for Cuyahoga County?
I'm the one and only, yes, that's it.
Well, I am very proud of you,
Oh,
and
thank
I'm
you.
glad to have you.
Thank
Thank you. You've undergone a tremendous amount of questioning. I'll ask my colleagues if there are any more questions, and if there aren't, then I will respectfully request we also move this towards second reading
Thank you.
suspension. And I'd like to add my name to this resolution. I think you're doing an outstanding job, and do I have a second? All right.
Add my name as well.
All right. All right.
Thanks
All
very
right,
much.
it's been moved in second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any miscellaneous business? If there being none, this meeting is adjourned.